think that they can use the hunger of children to try to leverage Democrats rather than feeding 42 million Americans. And we're not going to stand for it. We're going to sue them. We're going to use the courts. We're going to use Congress. And we're going to do everything we can at the community level to make sure that Americans can put food on the table this weekend.
Should the Democratic,
and we're not going to stand for it.
Should the Democratic senators from New Mexico, your home state, vote to open the government so that these SNAP funds are not at risk?
You know, New Mexico Democrat Melanie Stansbury is about to show you just how asinine a question this is from Jake Tapper. Watch.
The administration is choosing to starve American children with money that they already have appropriated.
I'm not applauding
their
tactics.
By the White House.
Well,
this is a choice by the White House.
This
they
is
are
also,
choosing
Congresswoman,
to cut
this is
off
also a
food
choice
assistance.
by Senate Democrats
No,
to not
it is
vote
not.
to open the government. Yes, it is. I understand why they're doing it. They're doing it because they want Medicaid funds restored. They're doing it because they want Obamacare premiums to be extended past the end of the year. I understand the reasoning.
So not only did Tapper answer his own question by presenting the false choice presented to the Democrats from the Republican spending bill, but he also revealed the sneaky tactics in which Republicans and some figures in the media have characterized the government shutdown as solely the fault of the Democrats and their party alone. But Stansbury knows better than to fall into that trap.
The money for contingency plans is sitting there. That is why the states are suing. The White House is withholding funds from
2 to 3 weeks worth of
have
SNAP funds.
Food.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it may not be a big deal to you, but let me
it is
tell
a big
you
deal
that
to
for
me.
the grandparents, for grandparents
It is a big deal
that
to me.
literally are feeding their children,
My point is that it's a short-term solution.
In those accounts.
It's a short-term.
At the end of the day, people need to be able to feed their families, and Saturday is when those funds run out.
If you feel so
and
strongly,
we are fighting
Congresswoman,
to get
why
that
not
funding.
ask the Senate Democrats from New Mexico to vote to open the government so that the SNAP funds...
Sir, I am here in the House of Representatives. It is shut down. I am fighting to get the government reopened. I am fighting to get funding put back into SNAP that is already existent, and I am fighting for the American people. I am here.
Stansbury's response was more than the political poise we're used to. It's moral clarity. She didn't take the bait because she understands what's at stake. Food on the table for 42 million Americans. The shutdown isn't about partisanship. It's about cruelty disguised as governance. Republicans have turned hunger into a talking point, tried to frame it as fiscal discipline while knowingly withholding aid Congress already approved. And the Trump administration's refusal to release funds they could release right now, that's not budgeting. It's a choice to inflict suffering. It's a test of power built on the assumption that the public won't notice who's holding the knife.
Why not distribute at least partial funding starting on Saturday?
The Republicans said, just keep the government open. We can continue to negotiate about health care for illegal aliens and LGBTQI programming in the Balkans and all the things that are on their list. We'll talk about that, but let's not shut the government down over that. So no, to answer your question, we have said all along that $5 billion in contingency, we don't believe we have the legal authority to distribute that. We're trying to follow the law here. We've used Band-Aid and duct tape all along this whole last month. And as we've said, it's not going to be there on November 1st. It's time to open the government.
So why not, as president, as budget director, and as agriculture secretary, say, you know what? We're going to find a way to let people eat starting Saturday and Sunday.
We do not have the ability to do something about it right now. Paying the troops was someone stepping up, an incredibly generous American patriot who said, I'll write that $130 million check.
So why not find a private donor to help pay for people's food?
Will you help me do that? $9.2 billion, maybe George Soros or someone like that will say, you know what? I have been funding these left radical agendas for so long. I'm going to now use my money to help people eat. But this is so easy. All we have to do is vote yes on a continuing resolution. Why won't the Democrats do that?
Then came Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rawlings, doubling down on the manipulation. Her comments weren't just disingenuous. They were, designed to bully Democrats into surrender. Rawlings blamed Congress for the SNAP shortfall while pretending her department's hands are tied, insisting that if Democrats cared about feeding people, they'd pass our bill. That's gaslighting of the highest order because the USDA already has the authority to act. Instead, Rawlings used her platform to threaten hunger as leverage, echoing Tapper's framing. but going further by suggesting that compassion itself is a form of partisanship. It's a cruelty so practiced, it almost sounds rehearsed.
Congress and Trump have refused to extend the tax credits, which will double the premiums for 20 million Americans who get their coverage through the Affordable Care Act. That's the line in the sand that the Democrats have drawn on the shutdown. But the bigger issues include that the one big beautiful bill that Trump signed into law on July 4th is going to cut $1 trillion out of the Medicaid program, which more than 1 in every 5 Americans rely on to make their health care affordable. Additionally, Trump has been giving giveaways to the private insurance industries, private insurance companies that have taken over the Medicare Advantage program. He doubled their pay increase this year, even though we already know that they're being overpaid by about $80 billion a year because a congressional official Congressional Medicare Payment Advisory Commission says they're being overpaid $80 billion. Nonetheless, Trump doubled their pay increase.
We are going to see a decrease in people's well-being, unnecessary mental health and pressure, similarly to what we saw in the previous shutdown under the first Trump administration. But even then, the secretary appointed was able to ensure that benefits went out earlier, so we wouldn't be in the situation where we are now, which is why Congress gave the authority to the secretary through contingency funds that they could utilize them, and they have been utilizing them to pay administrative expenses for the states. So they just have to tap into those resources and any additional reserves, for example, in Section 32 that they utilize to fund WIC. The secretary can and should utilize this authority and not play with people's lives, their livelihood, with their food, particularly when everything's more expensive.
The SNAP crisis is a perfect snapshot of America in 2025, a country run on indifference. Empathy is weakness, cruelty is policy. And corporations, they're treated like living beings. Actual people, they're treated like liabilities. You see it everywhere. Hunger, broken health care, underfunded schools, all symptoms of the same disease. And every one of them is a policy choice because we could fix hunger tomorrow. We could fund health care and education equitably tomorrow. But those in power chose not to because suffering keeps people distracted, divided, dependent. It's not dysfunction, it's design.
Some of the hardest hit states are states like Louisiana, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Oregon. They have more than 15% of their population depending on these food stamps. More than 200 House Democrats have urged the agency to tap into those billions of dollars in emergency funds here to prevent this funding gap. But the USDA, as you point out, insists those funds aren't legally available to states or to them, and that states that try to cover the cost themselves, these states will not be reimbursed. But got to point out, questions linger. If the administration was able to reappropriate funds to pay the military, why is it unwilling to do so here? Either way, the clock is ticking. 41 million Americans in a couple of days from now may not have this food assistance and may not even have food on their table, which is a scary thought.
That is terrifying.
So when Democrats like Melanie Stansbury fight to keep SNAP alive, they're not just defending one program. They're fighting for the basic idea that government should protect people, not starve them into submission. Trump administration could spin, deflect, threaten. But this isn't about budget, math, or politics. It's about moral rot, leadership that celebrates cruelty and calls it courage. Hunger, healthcare, education, none of it has to be this way. But until we demand empathy as a governing principle again, the cycle of pain is going to continue. The people at the bottom will keep paying the price.